Hello, year 12 students. This quick PowerPoint video is looking at the QCAA external exam with a specific focus on the text Macbeth. This PowerPoint is going to look at the assessment objectives, explore what you need to do in order to address those assessment objectives. So I will know and understand the requirements and expectations of the English external exam. I will understand, or you will understand, the assessment objectives and know the elements required to write a concise and focused analytical essay. You will know you have addressed these learning intentions if you can explain what the external exam paper will look like and explain what you need to include in your essay to address the assessment objectives. So you should know what the assessment is, but very quickly, the examination is an analytical response to a literary text, in this case Macbeth, from the prescribed text list in the form of an analytical essay for an audience with a deep understanding of the text. This is crucial, an audience with a deep understanding of the text. The people who are reading your essays know the text inside out. Don't tell them what they already know. Don't tell them what happens in the play. Don't summarize the play. Don't tell them when the play was written. Don't tell them when and where William Shakespeare was born. You need to make sure that your essay is analytical. You are analyzing in response to the question that you were discussing. The purpose is to communicate an informed and critical perspective. It needs to be informed and it needs to be critical in response to an unseen question or task on the text studied in depth in Unit 4. So this is coming directly from QCAA syllabus, and you need to do this in 800 to 1,000 words. You have 200 words to play around with. Don't be below 800, don't be above 1,000. Let's have a look at the assessment objectives and the EAMG, which is the External Assessment Marking Guide. It is slightly different, or a little bit different, to the ISMG. There are 11 assessment objectives in total. I've outlined them here on this page and on the next page, but we'll go into them here in a bit more detail. The External Assessment Marking Guide. In the External Assessment Marking Guide, as I said, it's different to the ISMG. For knowledge application, there are 21 marks going. Assessment objective 3, 4, and 5 are assessed there. In organization and development, there are 19 marks. And this is assessment objective 1, 2, 6, 7, and 8. And in textual features, there are 15 marks. That's assessment objective 9, 10, and 11. But we will unpack those as we go through this PowerPoint. First one, knowledge application. This is what the ESMG looks like. You will, in the marking of this, you will receive a grade for each of these three columns. Okay, so if we look, analysis of perspectives and representations, analysis of the way ideas underpin the literary text, and analysis of the writer's choices. This keyword here, analysis, analysis, analysis. Okay, so you will get a mark for here, a mark for here, and a mark for here. Okay, so obviously, if you get 7, 7, 7, you're going to get 21 marks. Okay, which is what is going for this. If we have a quick look down the column for analysis of perspectives and representations, demonstrates consistent, astute, and purposeful analysis of complex perspectives and representations in the literary text, focusing on the relevant identity or writer's approach. So that's pretty significant response there. And going down a mark, you take out the astute and take out the complex. Okay, so you'll see how it's starting to get less and less and less as you get down to 0 at the bottom. Okay. So the three assessment objectives that are assessed here, as I said, are 3, 4, and 5. Assessment objective 3, what do you need to do? Analyze perspectives and representations of concepts, identities, times, and places in a literary text. We're looking here at analysis of perspectives and representations. That is pretty much this column here. Okay, so assessment objective 3 is here. Okay, perspectives and representations of concepts, identities, times, and places in the text. Assessment objective 4, analyze the way cultural assumptions, attitudes, values, and beliefs underpin a literary text and invite audiences to take up positions. There's quite a bit there, which we will unpack in a second, but that's pretty much looking at this one here. Okay, how we are positioned by the analysis of cultural assumptions, attitudes, values, and or beliefs. So what do all of these different things mean? Cultural assumptions. In Macbeth, some of the cultural assumptions, you're looking at the Elizabethan and the Jacobean era, the time period in which Macbeth was written. We've got the Great Chain of Being, which is the understanding of kingship at that time in England. We've got King James's interest in witchcraft. Macbeth, as we know, Shakespeare, wrote Macbeth specifically for King James, because King James had an interest in finding witches, hunting witches, killing witches. That's one of the reasons why witches are included, but also the cultural assumptions of the Elizabethan Jacobean era, where throughout Europe the hunt for witches was pretty intense. Which is unpacked here: the European belief and understanding of witches at the time, the Gunpowder Plot, which was an attempt on the assassination of King James by some Catholic conspirators, led by Guy Fawkes as one of the conspirators. That's why there is the murder of Duncan in Macbeth, because when Shakespeare wrote the play, writing the play specifically for King James, he was writing things that King James was interested in. Okay, and one of those was witchcraft, and then the assassination of a king, or the attempted assassination of King James, which led to the assassination of Duncan in Macbeth. Okay, so those things they're all cultural assumptions of the play, but also it focuses on the identity or the writer's approach. Okay, so that links in here to the writer's approach, why he included some of those things in the play. Inviting audiences to take up positions. So the second part of this assessment objective, this is how do we respond to the play. One way in which you could make sure you are ticking this off is use some adverb start sentences. So use adverbs to position your audience to your thesis and your argument. Some adverbs: alarmingly, unnervingly, deliberately, naturally, unexpectedly, surprisingly, unnecessarily, recklessly, cautiously, patiently. Okay, fortunately. Okay, so think about some of those adverbs. Have some of those adverbs in your mind going into the exam. Using an adverb start sentence can very easily help you to position your audience in relation to your thesis. Okay. Assessment objective 5, analyze the effects of aesthetic features and stylistic devices in a literary text. Okay, we'll unpack what each of those mean in a second, but if we go back here, this is the writer's choices. Okay, analysis of the writer's choices. There are 7 marks going for this. 7 marks for all of these, but 7 marks going for analysis of stylistic and aesthetic choices. What's the difference? Aesthetic features are parts of a text that prompt emotional and critical responses. So something, and this obviously links into the positioning of the audience also. And the stylistic devices, how aspects of text are used and how they affect meaning. So examples of excuse me, aesthetic features and stylistic devices in the play. Obviously, we know there's tons of imagery in Macbeth. There's personification. An obvious example is the personification of the dagger. There's personification of murder in that same soliloquy from Macbeth. There's tons of metaphors. Some of the motives and symbolism in the play, we've got light, dark, heaven, hell, blood, guilt, water, birds, supernatural, hallucination, or hallucinations. Again, the dagger, soliloquy, and Banquo's ghost. Rhyming couplets, Macbeth using the rhyming couplets, mirroring the witches' rhyming couplets. Motives, some of those we've outlined up here. So these are all aesthetic features, and how Shakespeare uses these to position the audience to reflect on Macbeth's actions, to reflect on Lady Macbeth's actions, to reflect on elements in the play, and how they position us. Stylistic devices. The soliloquies used. Macbeth has 7 soliloquies in the play. If you're asked to focus on the soliloquies of Macbeth, Don't just focus on I'm a dagger soliloquy. There are 7 more or 6 more soliloquies from Macbeth. There's 2 or 3 from Lady Macbeth. There's 1 from Banquo. Okay, so have a look at the soliloquies in the play, or the asides, soliloquies or asides. Macbeth speaking in rhyming couplets when he's about to kill Duncan and ordering the murder of Banquo and Lady Macduff. So that's an aesthetic feature, rhyming couplets, but it also stylistic. It's the way in which the play is put together. Iambic pentameter, the text structure. So you've got a series of short scenes in Act 5 leading up to the murder of Macbeth. Juxtaposition, so example, the contrasting of 2 settings. The juxtaposition of Lady Macbeth at the beginning of the play to the end of the play. Approaches to characterization. Use of rhetorical devices, so repetition, control of sentence length and form. So if you look at, again, some of the soliloquies and the way in which the sentence length and pattern is used. Literary patterns and variation, sound devices, they're all examples of stylistic devices. So having an understanding of some of these in the play, where they appear, how they appear, will have to will mean that you're able to tick this off as you go on. Now, as you go through the rest of the assessment objectives, you'll see that these can be linked to other assessment objectives. Okay, so selecting subject evidence from subject matter from the play. You can select quotes that are looking at light and dark, for example. Okay, or the personification of the dagger. Is this a dagger that I see before me? Macbeth talking about being stepped in so far in blood that he may as well keep going on instead of coming back. So you'll be able to incorporate some of these aesthetic features as part of the subject matter as we go on. The second section, organization and development. Again, you can see here there are assessment objective 1, 2, 6, 7, and 8 here. 19 marks going for organization and development. So we're looking at the structure and development of your essay, your selection of subject matter, and your synthesis of subject matter. Okay, so the selection and synthesis, sequencing and organization of your essay, and cohesion, linking ideas together. There are 4 marks going for cohesion, how you link ideas together within your essay. So assessment objective 1, use patterns and conventions of an analytical essay to respond to an unseen question. You must use the correct structure, patterns, and features of analytical essays that relate to context, purpose, and audience. You must have a thesis. You must have an introduction. You must develop your thesis in body paragraphs, and you must have a conclusion. Sample structure of an essay, have your introduction, 75 to 80 words. In your introduction, include your thesis. Have a series of short body paragraphs, aim for 140 words each. You want to keep your reader who is reading this engaged. Okay, you don't want them to have to read through and wade through 300 to 400 word paragraphs. Okay, so have 1 point per paragraph. You can have multiple points, multiple paragraphs that expand on 1 point. Okay, quotes and evidence from the play are necessary in each paragraph. Each paragraph should be analyzing, link ideas together and back to the thesis. Some paragraph structures that could be used: lower paragraph, compare contrast paragraph, hammer paragraph. Have a conclusion of 75 to 80 words. So you can have up to 50 to 60, 5 to 6 body paragraphs as part of your response. Okay. Establish and maintain the role of the essay writer and relationship with audience, with your readers. Okay, so establish and maintain. So keep them engaged. You will do this, establish it by having a thesis. You will maintain that throughout by writing an essay that responds to the thesis. Select and synthesize subject matter to support perspectives in an essay response to an unseen question. This is what I was speaking about earlier with the aesthetic features and stylistic devices. This is where you can incorporate some of them here. Choose the most appropriate evidence and analyze it in a concise and effective manner. So some of your subject matter you can have and how you can incorporate them. Obviously, you do not have the copy of the play with you. If you can remember some quotes, you can use direct quotes. There are some quotes that you will remember. You can include a summary of an event, character, or a concept. Do not provide a summary of the play. Paraphrase a section from the text. You can have a reference to a specific example. So, for example, if you wanted to include something about Macbeth thinking for the first time about killing Duncan after having the witch's prophecies, but you can't remember the exact quote, which was, "If good, why do I yield to that suggestion? Its horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock on my ribs." That's quite a long quote. And you probably don't want to put all of that in anyway. So how can you perhaps reference that specific example? You might say Macbeth has a vision of killing Duncan for the first time after meeting the witches, in which you could put in the quote there, "His heart knocked at his ribs." Okay, something like that. Okay, so there's ways around it. If you can't remember full quotes, there's ways around getting fragments of quotes and putting that in, whilst also referencing specific examples. Okay, but you must select subject matter and synthesize that subject matter. You need to synthesize it back in relation to your thesis. Make sure you're always developing your thesis. Assessment objective 7, organize and sequence subject matter to achieve particular purposes. So organize, have your most important information first, your most in your body paragraph. Do your plan. Make sure you know what's going into each paragraph. Have your most important one first. Each paragraph contributes to the response and develops the thesis. Your body paragraphs must be a clear development of your contention or your argument through close analysis of the text. So have a topic sentence to advance your contention, have a close analysis of ideas, have a link back to your thesis. Make sure with your thesis, we didn't say this, make sure your thesis is not just a repetition of the question. Okay, don't just repeat the question as your thesis. Your thesis must form an argument. You must have an argument as part of your thesis. It must be a contention. It must be something that you're able to develop throughout. Okay, so don't just, if the question is, how do the witches' prophecies impact Macbeth? Okay, don't say the witches' prophecies have a strong impact on Macbeth. Okay, you need to form an argument. The witches' prophecies in Act 1 impact Macbeth's mental state and lead him to committing crimes that he would previously not have done. Okay, probably a bad example, but it's more of an argument than just repeating the question. In your conclusion, summarize your overall argument in relation to your thesis. Have a final observation of the text in relation to the question. Cohesive devices. Your cohesive devices through grammar and punctuation, link ideas together. Cohesive words and links, link back to your thesis. Link ideas together within paragraphs. So as we said, you might have 2 paragraphs which are unpacking the same idea. So you might have an analysis of the weather in the play. Your first paragraph might be about Act 1, Scene 1, and the unnatural or the kind of dark and eerie mood that's set there, and the witches meeting in thunder and lightning and speaking about the weather. And then you might say, similarly, or you might have a cohesive word, furthermore, this is developed throughout the play. Or this is developed with the murder of Duncan, with unnatural events occurring. Some cohesive words here, another, in addition, furthermore, likewise, moreover, similarly, although, alternatively, you can read it there. Okay, tons of different cohesive devices that could be used. Textual features, these are 9, 10, and 11. We've got 15 marks here. You can get 15 marks for this exam and essay just through how you write. Okay, forgetting about the content, forgetting about incorporation of well, quotes will become important because you need to use quotation marks and all of that, but you can get 15 marks just by writing correctly, using punctuation correctly, spelling words correctly, using effective vocabulary, and using good grammar and sentence structure. Assessment objective 9, make language choices for particular purposes. So this is looking at this grammatically accurate sentence structures, and using vocabulary with discrimination to develop ideas, and using a register, a kind of formal academic register or tone to your essay. So use analytical vocabulary. Here are tons of analytical words here that you might be able to use within your essay. Okay. The witches advocate for Macbeth to, or Lady Macbeth advocates for Macbeth to kill his king. Macbeth captures the imagination of his audience. Shakespeare integrates. Okay, so think about some of those and incorporating some of those words in. Assessment objective 10, use grammar and language structures for a particular purpose in an essay. Have a variety in sentence structure, precise word choice and technical terms. Never say I believe or in my opinion, always write in third person. Say the audience are positioned to or we are invited to. Write in present tense. Yes, it was written back in 1606, but literature transcends time, and we are looking at it here, today, now. Appropriate and effective use of punctuation. Accurate spelling. They all come in here. Written features to achieve particular purposes, spelling, punctuation, paragraphing, etc. So make sure they are all done as best as you can possibly do them. Yes, it's an exam. Yes, you don't have too much time, but you must give yourself time to edit. You've got 15 minutes planning, 2 hours writing. You'd want to be giving yourself at least 15 to 20 minutes time to go back over and plan and edit your work. And that is the end of that. So I hope that is useful to you to know exactly what the assessment objectives are, to know what the external assessment marking guide is, so that it won't be a surprise for you on the day, although you don't get the EAMG in the exam anyway. But at least you know what you're being marked on. Thank you.